Hello, my name's Niranjan, the host of Master of Your Crafts podcast. Learning from leaders who are continuously inspired, passionate, and driven to align with their soul purpose, sharing their gifts to bring healing to others. The music is composed by Rebecca Everett. Today is episode number 45, where I'll be talking to Tiffany Bush, who has creatively weaved her passion for yoga as a steadfast lifestyle choice. Tiffany is a mind, body, soul healer. She radiates a warm-hearted approach vibe of, I see you, I get you, I feel you, and yes, you can heal. Tiffany's inspirational and empowering yoga workshop merge breathwork and movement with meditation, journaling, and sound healing. She facilitates life-changing experiences and provides the gift of everlasting self-care tools. Tiffany brings passion and authenticity both on and off the mat. Her divine, goddess-inspired message centers on mind, body, soul connection. Tiffany is a yoga teacher, philanthropist, financial service agent, healer, speaker, writer, workshop leader based out of Georgia. She teaches privately and offers classes online with Gaia.com. She can be reached at tiffanybushyoga.com. Hello and welcome to Tiffany.
Hello.
I'm excited to have you on the podcast and to capture a little bit more about Tiffany and who she is and all she has done and all she has yet to do, but we'll get to that a little bit later. I'm curious to learn a bit about you. What do you believe about yourself? And do you feel that belief, wherever it stemmed from or however it's augmented, defines who you are as Tiffany?
Yeah, I love that. That's such a loaded question, but it's like, who am I? I am like this person in the world trying to figure it out, right? And I do all the things like read and write and make mistakes just like everyone else. And I really think that I was just talking about my mom today. I was like, she's so nice, but she's not really like religious, right? And I always used to have this like thing with religion, like you have to be so religious and follow this certain doctrine to be a good person, right? And I started to like be let down by people in the church and all the things. And then so I'm this product of like going to church camp and spending my spring breaks at the like on revival week because it's around Easter, and just like being super involved in that. But I always had this like deep-seated part of like what love is, and I always knew that that's what God was and what love was. So I would say that I'm just a manifestation of like love and trying to do my best and knowing that people make mistakes and forgiveness and just a little bit of the way I grew up, right? And now I am just trying to figure out who I am now, which is someone that's still exploring.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I love how you positioned it differently in terms of your mom not being religious, but somehow you went onto that path of seeking that structure,
Yes.
seeking that element to give you more, I guess.
Right.
Which I hear from my own dialogue, it's the opposite. And from others, it's typically the opposite. So I'm curious of how that came about for you.
Yeah, that is a good point. Because and then I think a different part about me too is I grew up, my mom would send us off to Virginia with my grandma for the summer, which was just something fun for us. It gave her a little break as a single mom after, I think I was 2 or 3 when she got a divorce. So it gave her a little break, and we spent a lot of time in church camp. So when you think about who raises you, right? Yeah. My grandma, which we went to Sunday church with her, and like that was every other Sunday because it was in the country. So you think about like how you're actually raised, and I feel like that's part of it too. Like I was raised by my grandma too. I was raised by like going to spring break with my grandparents too. So and then she was like just the person that was like, yeah, whatever you need, Tiff, whatever you want. Like she was very kind of laid back in the way in her approach. And so when you have someone that's quiet and like super, she was so what I would call people that I love on point, right? She's just on point, like go to work, get your money, like do the things, right? And so I always wanted to like make her happy, right? Or just like not upset her. And you know, a part of that was like just being a good, right? Being good and like following a certain thing, even though that wasn't her thing. I didn't really think about it like that as a kid. I wasn't like, oh, she's not religious. I just knew she was a really nice person, a really good
Hmm.
person, you know? So
Hmm.
that's a good question.
Yeah. It is interesting how we sometimes don't, well, I guess maybe for myself, we don't realize that these other people who we don't call mom and dad
Yeah.
can influence our lives so much more, like the
Yes.
grandparents, the aunts, the uncles, and
Oh
all
my
those
gosh.
community members can shape us in quite a different form.
Yeah, like make or break. I was thinking about this morning. I was like, so my uncle, it was so funny because I was like, hey, uncle, I want to be a personal trainer. And he's like, that's a dumb idea. And I was like, hey, uncle, I want to do this. And every time I would go to him, it was this dumb idea, right? So as a kid, you think about your uncle, this person that you look up to, and this person that is supposed to, you know, he was such a good guy. And it's not like he was bad, but then you start to stop sharing your ideas with grown-ups because you think, oh, they're all going to have this reaction to my like under like my wishes, right? So
Right.
that's an interesting thing. It's like everyone isn't my uncle, everyone isn't going to be against my crazy ideas and all the things, you know.
Hmm.
So that's
Hmm.
a really interesting point, even though yeah, he helped raise me too, but maybe
Yeah.
that wasn't like the best response for a kid, right?
Yeah. Or maybe it was because that fueled you to really go a little deeper
Yeah,
and stay persistent and stay constant and stay focused and on target. So maybe it
that's
really
true
was a good
too.
thing,
That is true too.
right? What are the attributes that you feel connect you to who you are based on the experiences that you have had
Mhm,
with the people who have raised you, hearing the no's and hearing many yeses from your successes?
mhm.
What would those be, do you feel?
Hmm. I would say I love to hear the word persistent when I'm in like the sales world and in the business world. I love that word because I am. It's like, okay, if I put my mind on something, I'm doing that and I'm going to like try it and I might fail and I might even stop after a while because I already did it, right? So persistent is one. I would also say very spiritual. I really feel like we all go through our life's experiences. And the fact is, like, if you look at my family, like one person, we had the same life growing up, but one person takes this path and the other takes this path. So I feel like I have a really good and strong relationship with God and his and her many forms. And so I would say spiritual, and I really have a strong faith. And I think when you tie all that in, you go back to, like being spiritual, having faith, but you also realize that I realize that I play a part in how it all turned out too. I can't just like roll over and say, hey, like help me, right? Like I have to ask for
Mhm,
help, or I have to show up, or I have to apply for that job, or I have to like actually show that I care, and then someone else might try to help me. And I really feel like when people see that I'm trying, then people are going to want to help, right? So
mhm.
I would say
Yeah,
those are some top things,
yeah.
attributes.
And they're so consistent from what I feel and what I sense of who you are. I guess you
Mhm.
obviously have to be very persistent when your uncle says no every single time. I get that. And then you seek another
Uh,
path where you can get some yeses and be
yeah.
a spirituality god or a community where you can hear some of those yeses. So that's pretty interesting that those are your core essences, I guess, to a certain degree.
Yeah, I would say.
Mhm. What do you feel your calling is in life?
Ooh, I actually think it's to just be one with everyone. I know that that sounds so like just when I because I we had to talk about this in my one of my yoga teacher trainings, and it's like it's just to show that you're not alone, that like we all go through crap. It's hard. Life is hard, right? But I want to say that like, yeah, I've been through things too. And I've also chosen to forgive, and I've also chosen to see you as one. And I know that like religion says you shouldn't like these types of people or whatever, but guess what? I like you too. So I feel like if we can be like, my goal is to say like, with this like duality that we usually feel in life, like because you're black or you're white and you're this religion or you look like that, that we're all supposed to like just go in these little categories. But again, growing up like half going to like mostly black summer camp, to going back to school with mostly white kids, one, I don't really fit in anywhere, right? Like even though my skin
Mm-hmm.
looks a certain way. So I really feel like my role is to just like say we're all one. It doesn't matter
Mm-hmm.
where you come from or how you look or what you think you should be. Ultimately, like we're all walking this path together. So I
Yeah.
think that's one of my missions, just to inclusivity, I would say.
Nice. Nice. How I can translate that from where you come from and what you have
Mhm.
shared expands beyond the physical form. So,
Mhm.
inclusivity based on who we are as human beings and doing a practice together, be it go to church together or be it doing a yoga practice or journaling or making dinner,
Mhm.
whatever that would look like, but also inclusivity with the unseen realms.
Yes, absolutely. I feel like you have your Jesus, and I like I'm looking at Chinnamasta right here, like just like, and I also love Jesus too, right? And I like see this like, and that goes back to the persistence in thought, right? Like I want to learn more about Krishna. I want to learn about the Tao. I want to learn about all these things and like put it all together, because guess what? It all comes back to this one really cool point. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the uniform, it's the unification, the union of all
Mhm.
things. And
Yeah.
then staying persistent of looking at what are the conflicts in it, because there's conflicts in everything,
Mhm.
and possibly even just drilling down into unraveling some of those conflicts,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
Which sounds like you have done just a few times.
Well, yeah, and I think about that. I think about like the way the Bible's written. I feel like there's conflict in language and like the way women are portrayed, right? And like then you look at some writers when they translate the Tao, I like see which one has more of a feminine perspective and which one has a masculine. And I also see a contrast sometimes, or like an over contrast, when there's like this girl power movement where we forget about the men too, and like forget about our masculine spirit and how important that is too. So I'm
Mhm.
always like kind of diving deep, and I just realized that I don't like when someone says it's this way, that's the way. I realized that I used to be so like, I would like listen so hard because I was like, I'm a good student. I'm going to take take the test and pass it. Right. But now I'm like, maybe there's another way. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, I do that with a lot of different things.
Do you recall a moment that really spurred you into that element of deeper curiosity or deeper dive, where you reflect now and go, I think that might have been the moment where I just rolled up my sleeves and just went all in?
Yeah, I love that question because it happened when I was in my yoga teacher training, my very first one, and I was sitting there. It was around Easter, and I'm reading the story about how Jesus arose from the dead, and then I'm like, we're reading about Krishna and how he represents love and kindness, and I just realized that there's so many like things that are elements that are the same, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I grew up to say like there's only one God, and if we like worship another God or say like this person is a representation of God, then we're going against religion, right? So that was when I was like, wait, we just have different schools of thought. You grew up over here in the West, and I grew up you grew up in the East, and I grew up in the West, and we just have different ways that we like have perceived God, right? And so that was
Mhm.
very eye opening for me. I kind of like clicked for me, I would say. I was
Hmm.
like, oh my, and it was like was released from that like very rigid way of thinking.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Did you navigate that conversation with your grandparents?
Well, that's the thing, like, not really, because when we think about, like, growing up in the church, right, like, like, one set of my grandparents, we actually don't even really speak to them anymore because of my mom's divorce, and they were the most, like, Christian people ever, right, and so again, when you think about, like, them excluding us because we're not part of the family anymore, and, like, some other things that happened too, which was, like, all for religion's sake, I didn't really have that opportunity to talk to them about it because they're already done kind of thing. And then
Right.
with my grandma, she's just so, I don't know, I would just say she's so like open to things, and I like talk to her like in passing, but it's not like doesn't have to be it. Like that's not all we talk about. And they're very, even though we went to church a lot and stuff, it's not like, I don't know, like, oh, well, you better do this. I was more me. Like, I was like, oh, I got to do this because I don't want to be a sinner or this and that.
Right.
So they just, yeah, allowed me to be this way.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. It's nice when you can get that acceptance.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I would say I am pretty lucky. I am like, yeah, definitely lucky. They call me weird or whatever, but that's cool. That's
Yeah.
cool. I don't care. Like I used to care. I would say I kind of cared, but like now I'm like, whatever. Like, whatever.
Yeah.
This has made me so much a better person. Like, and look at you. Like, I don't know. I just
Yes.
can't. Yeah. I
Yeah,
just
it's
can't.
interesting. I've had people say that to me
Mhm.
also.
Mhm.
And it just comes with an element of, yes, I don't fit your mold, but I'm good in my own kind of mold.
Right. Yeah, and I don't
Right?
want to be in your mold anyways. I've never
That's
really
right.
wanted to fit in. I mean, I wanted to be like accepted, but never really to fit in. I would actually get annoyed when people would like copy me, but now I'm like a lot better about it. But
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That's a teeter-totter for me, I guess. Or it was for sure. I think I've got
yeah.
over that. But yeah, it's an interesting space. What do you feel are some of your intentions with the craft in being connected to spirituality and the movement and the practice of the masculinity and the femininity and creating that unison, beautiful balance that we're all craving, knowingly or unknowingly? What what's your deeper intention with this gifts that you have received?
Yeah, that's a good question. And first of all, like, to realize that it is a gift, right? Like when you're like, you're in it, you're like, huh, like, does anyone, I feel like everyone is like this kind of thing. So that's the first thing. So I've actually been working on this idea, and my sister was like, just let everyone do it with you the first time. And I'm like, but I want to do it first to like make it perfect. But it's called Holy Rewild. And it's like going back to, first of all, being in spirit and one with nature and being one with like who we are before the world said we're this or that, because everyone has that, right? Like everyone has been
Mhm.
told that they're this or that. But to like do this in a way that it's like sanctified, where I say, when I say sanctified, like make sure you're taking in the right foods, and make sure you're writing and being grateful, and make sure you are reading and learning, and make sure you're moving your body. And so to me, that's a rewilding. That's like a going back to who we thought. I would say, like as a kid, right? I think I was listening to the writer Gay Hendricks. He said that kids have like 20,000 different movements before they're 4, and then after that, we have like 200 different things we can do with our body, right? And so it's like,
Wow.
what are we like? Where are we stuck? Like, my goal is to like start to notice where we're stuck, to help people get over those things, but also get through them, not just like scan over them. Okay, we're good. But to say, hey, like this sucked for me, and I'm going to work through this. I'm going to get help if I need it. But the truth is, a lot of our like stress, we hold in our bodies and we hold in our things. And so the more we learn about the stress we hold, and the more we learn about what this ailment means, like the more we can actually um, help ourselves. Right. So that's my goal, is just to help on people on this path, like to help them do what I do. Right. Like this is how I wake up, and you don't have to do what I do, but my goal is for you to actually question everything that I'm doing, so that you have your own sense of what being wild for you is. So that's really,
Mhm.
I want to like help people get wild again, and just like, and I think about that too with like my hair and how I used to straighten it, which I still straighten it too. Like that is not a thing that I don't do, but to look at myself and be like, oh my God, my hair's so crazy. Like I used to be so like, okay, got to be perfect. And yeah, I still want to be beautiful. And that's okay too, right? To be wild and beautiful is fine too. And I think that is another thing I'm trying to get over. Like, it's okay to like want to be like surrounded with beauty and like still be wild, right? And like, yeah, you can still be
Yeah.
natural, but just enhance your natural beauty. Like, yeah, so I'm
Yeah.
working through all these like beauty standards and everything, but my intention is just to help people go through those phases and those like cycles of growth too.
through their own challenges, I
Yes.
guess, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
And not always look for everyone else for the answer, right? Like we read this book, like, I still don't have the answer. I still don't have the answer. Right.
that's
So,
right. It takes us almost a lifetime for us to hide the answers and not
mm,
be curious enough to look for them until we get on much later in life. And then, like you said, we read a profound book and going, where's my aha? After 3-4 hours of reading a book, you got like 30-40 years of ingrained doctrine that needs to be unraveled.
yes.
Can't,
Yeah, I feel like sometimes we don't know that we're stuck. Like we don't even know that we're living outside of our wild. We think we are wild by like going out without our mask on or something, Like we think
yeah,
about certain things that are no, but that's not really wild. Have you gone outside lately kind of thing?
yeah,
Have you read a different like off like someone that is outside of your whole normal reading and like
yeah.
your own way of thought? Like I even follow people on Instagram that are so annoying to me because I want to hear the other side of life. Like I want to hear people that are super racist or super like black power. And like I love to hear the two sides of it because I'm like, oh my God, there are people that think like this, that don't think like
Mhm,
me. So
mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, we need the contrast.
Yeah. It's very
We need the
helpful because
contrast.
otherwise we just sit in like this colorless world.
True,
Boring.
true. Which is the same aspect of what you do and what you delve into is that area of femininity and that area of masculinity of really recognizing when you're in it and when you're not in it and how to embrace it, regardless of what gender you may identify yourself with.
Absolutely. Yes, it's so important to just like understand what feminine qualities are and also understand what masculine qualities are and understand like when you're in the shadow of those and when you're like super high on those and need to balance out. I'm constantly like exploring those questions and I like ask those questions of myself like the books that I read like I do a lot of Sally Kempton's work with tantra and just like the goddess study and just learning more from her and it's like it never ends. I'm
Mhm.
always asking myself, like, how am I embodying this Kali energy, or how am I like overdoing it, underdoing it too?
Right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, because there's an element of that too, is not doing enough and not pushing yourself too much and
Mm-hmm.
having the pendulum swing the opposite way where you're so off course.
Yep. Yep. And that is helpful too. Like you said, that's like part of the journey, like to get off course, and then
Yeah,
whoa, I am like way off course.
absolutely.
Let's get back on there.
That's right. That's right. When was the time you can identify that you may have gone off course?
Mm. I even think just like last year or I would say probably like in the last year or a year and a half or something, like just getting off course with my health. And I honestly took my health for granted. I was just so strong and just so like I could just like eat whatever I want and do all these things. And I got sick. I got the shingles, which is like only people get them that are older and like
That's right.
unhealthy. And so what I realized is before that happened, I was super out of balance. I was super like stressed at work, even though I loved my job. It was like I knew I needed to get out of like that position. And so I just wasn't really happy there. And so did I do anything about it? No, you just get stuck there. And then when I got sick and like lost my ability to be physical and strong, one, it took me a long time to heal and to accept that process because I like would try to push myself and then hurt myself again and and so then after I was healed, then you don't have the same strength, right? I didn't have that strength, so I was just like oh no, I gotta like oh no, what, like who am I without this strength, who am I without this, right? So then then I was just like, oh well, like whatever, eat whatever, do whatever. And now I'm like back in, I'm like of the next, again, that pendulum, and I'm like back in the swing of like I actually love to work out. Actually, that's where I started my whole life journey, in the gym, right? Like, and when I was 12,
Mhm.
going to the gym to get stronger. And what do I actually like? Just because I'm a yogi now doesn't mean I can't like work, like lift weights and stuff. So it goes back to like all these like boxes and stuff that I was trying to fit in, or not even trying to, just like it happened, right? Like it just happens when you forget like what makes you happy and like what makes you thrive. And so yeah, I've just gotten back to weight training, hit training, like yoga, of course, like
Mhm.
always, and slowing down on the yoga mat. And yeah, like what is yoga to me now, even though it's going to keep changing? Like, what is it to me now? Not like
Mhm.
these big, like fancy things and like just hard, like, yeah. When I first
Yeah.
started yoga, I wanted to be like do all these fancy moves and stuff. And then I'm like, wait, why am I doing this? Like, why am I doing all the
Yeah.
fancy moves?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So,
Exactly. It's often really interesting how we feel we need to change various practices. Like you said, you started yoga and you started in the fitness space
yep.
first at the gym and doing various activities, practices there, and then you transitioned into yoga, and that took you on a whole different world.
Yep.
And now you've kind of somewhat maybe come full circle of going back to the gym
Yep.
and back into yoga. But what I feel is it's not often the practice that changes. The practice and the sequence and the process often is the same.
hmm
It's we as beings change,
Yes.
right? So,
Absolutely.
so no doubt how you have gone through your transitional stage in your health and regaining your health after that episode, I want to
hmm
call it.
Yep.
So now you're going back into yoga or going back to the gym in a different lens. It's a
hmm
different you to a certain degree.
It absolutely is. And even it goes back to like when I first learned yoga, like this is the sequence, this is how you do it. And now I'm like exploring more creative sequencing. And I've always like loved that part of it. It goes back to like, oh, does it have to be this way? Right. You can still have integrity and like move to the back of your mat a different way than like what your teacher taught you. So I've just
Yeah.
like over the last year, I've just broken down that like attachment to, oh, this is what my teacher taught me. I have to do it this way. And like, what does it feel like to me? And I think just learning more about tantra yoga, how like yoga in itself was made, it was like designed based on someone getting up, like they're feeling the spirit in them and they start to
Mhm.
move their body a certain way that makes them feel
Yep.
good. And then we learn it, but we have this like crazy dogged approach of like, okay, this is how you do it. But like the truth
That's
is
right.
it was very organic when it started. So it's like, okay, how can I get back to those roots, but also keep people safe as they practice,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and myself, of
So
course.
absolutely. So a very, like you said, an organic, a very intuitive, a very spiritual practice, if you
Yes.
will.
Yes, yes. And I'm like learning to embrace that. I like look back and I started teaching at the gym and I love working at the gym for so long. And I realized that like a lot of it, I just wanted to be there to like remind them of their power, right? And of course, yoga was part of it, but like now I'm owning that as like that's the kind of teacher that I am. It's not like um I don't know, I don't have to be like, okay, and then inhale, exhale, exhale, inhale. I don't have to be like that. I can be like super spiritual and people are going to embrace that. And that's like okay in a way, because I always thought it
Yeah.
had to be that like class and because they like that, right? And like they accept me this way, but now I know like the world will accept me for however I teach, you know.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Which almost brings me back to the question of that self-acceptance piece that we talked about earlier of being raised differently and looking differently in different neighborhoods or different schools that you went from camp to school
hmm
and being okay with that difference.
hmm
It takes us so long to accept it.
yeah, yeah. um I almost feel like when you're in it you don't really know, it doesn't seem like, oh wow, this is so hard. I mean, yeah, it is. Like when someone's like, why do you talk like that when you're in certain school, or like my stepdad would like, where's your black friends? And I'm like, but I don't, like I just have like these are my friends, right? And so I think when you're there it's not as hard, but when you look back you're like, wow, that like really shaped and molded me. Like I just got to the point where if certain girls didn't like me because of like how I talk or don't talk or how I look or don't look, then I probably shouldn't be their friend. And it really, I don't know. It was hard. Like I definitely had people that didn't like me, but I had a lot more people that did like me. So I think that like, and I liked a lot more people too. So I think it helped me. I don't think it was like the hardest thing ever. There's always going to be people that don't like you for even if you're like your best version of yourself. And that's the funny
Absolutely.
part. I love it. And and I also realize now that like a lot of times people don't like you, but they probably don't like themselves very much either. That's what it really boils down to. It's like there's no way you can't love someone else if you love yourself so much.
Absolutely.
So yeah, there's a compassion there. But also,
Yeah.
yeah, some people just aren't for me, and you're not for, and that's okay
Yeah.
too.
Was there a pivotal point where you came to that spot where it's okay, I can accept myself with all of this,
Mhm.
regardless of what other people think or what other people say or what that external voice and structure and societal environment has been created?
Yeah.
Was there a point where you was like, no, I'm good with who I am.
Yeah.
I'm stepping into this.
I would say like it's again a continual process, but I think like in college, when I realized like there was like this camp, there's like this organization that you go to, um, and it was for minorities, and I couldn't go because I went to this thing, and I was doing like this modeling thing, and I couldn't go because I was in New York, right? And so then I get back, and then I'm and like met with the same challenges. It's like the Black kids think I'm too good for everybody because I'm not like involved with this minority organization, and so I realized I was like, you know what, like everywhere I go, someone's gonna have something negative to say, like, and it doesn't. And I'm going to find my friends, and I'm going to find like who I should be friends with and all the things. And so throughout college I was like part of like student government, where it didn't really matter your color, right? It didn't really matter like all the things. And then I like got into a Black sorority, Alpha Kappa Alpha, and there's a mix of women that were like embraced me for who I am, because when you get to a certain level where you're like confident in yourself, then you can accept other people. And I met a lot of women like that, and so I realized that we're going to do our own thing. We're not necessarily going to be best friends, but I also have a lot of best friends from it too. So I think I just realized that like it doesn't really matter where you're from. And I think it's not just me, like no matter what, like people are going to have something to say about you. And I think that's when I realized too. And yeah, like it doesn't matter if you're white or Black or any other color, you're going to be nice and mean. And that's all it is. I just feel like people are people, and it doesn't matter where you come from or how much money you have or don't have. They're
Yeah,
going to be people. So I think
absolutely.
college is when I like noticed. And I also studied sociology too. So I'd studied a lot of different, like,
Yeah.
people.
It's an interesting road to be on and observe and engage with in this thing called life that we
Oh,
have,
yeah.
right?
It is. It's cool. It's like, oh my gosh. And then yeah, it's cool. And think about how much I've learned over the years and stuff. And yeah, it's
Yeah.
cool. Actually, I'm really happy.
What do you think are some of the bigger lessons that you have learned through some of the maybe biggest challenges that you have experienced that
Hmm.
might be beneficial for the listeners?
Yeah, I think one is don't let anyone tell you who you are, right? Like just because I've had like managers that tell me like, "Oh, you can't do this because you don't have experience doing this." I'm like, "Wait a minute, like I can just get experience." And so it's easy to believe people, especially people in power and above you, that you're
Mhm.
not good enough for this, or this isn't who you're supposed to be. So I would say like that's one of my biggest lessons. And I think about that in yoga too. Like just because I didn't like go to India and study directly under someone like really famous, doesn't mean I'm not a good yoga teacher and I can't study and I'm not good enough to be a teacher, right? Like,
Mhm. Mhm.
so it expands everywhere you go. Um, and I would say that's probably one of my biggest lessons, and also just be really forgiving of people. It's like we're all doing the best we can. Like I really used to be very like, I don't know, like hard on people and like how could I do that kind of thing. And now I'm like, wait a minute, we all make mistakes, and guess what? Like we'll get over it, they'll get over it, I'll get over it, and
Yeah.
let's just like move on. So I think just
Yeah.
be super forgiving as much as we can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're big lessons. They're hard ones.
I know. They are, but it's like if I can learn to forgive myself, then I can learn to forgive other people. And I've read A Course in Miracles really shaped a big part of like how like why I think like that too. I just love that book, and it's just
Okay.
like how can we just be. Yeah, that was a
Yeah.
really good one for me. I'm actually rereading that now.
Are you? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is an interesting one for sure. It
Yeah.
is. Yeah. But some wonderful life lessons is really step into who you are.
Mm.
It's the same rule of do what I do, not do what I say.
Right. Yes,
right?
exactly. And I am like a firm believer in like believe what people do and not what they say too. I'm very much like that. Like, yes, you
Yeah,
can say it all day, but who are you really? Like you can study with whoever, but who are you really,
exactly. Exactly. So, with those beautiful lessons of persistence and spirituality and hearing those no's and being raised in an environment where there's been so much contrast
Mhm.
in your life
Mhm.
and having these wonderful nuggets of life lessons so far, as we're all growing and evolving and learning, what's next for you?
Mm.
What's in
That
store for Tiffany next?
I would love to know that too. I'm like, I'm gonna keep doing my thing, right? Like I would say I'm a writer at heart, so hopefully I can publish some things, and I'm a journaler at heart. So like I've been writing this journal for a long time, and hopefully I can like get the courage enough to offer it to other people one day. And just try to package what I've learned and how I've learned it in a way that someone else can learn from me too. That's my biggest goal, is to like, how can I like take this knowledge and package it in a way that you can say, yes, I want to hear this, and attract the people that want to hear it too. Because a part of me is like, oh, I don't want to like offend anyone in a way, right? But now I'm like, wait, people will actually want to hear what I have to say, and I actually can help you. And so it's just a matter of like getting that out. So I have like this digital content course that I'm taking with this
Yes.
amazing, she's like a spiritual teacher too. And so just like staying in line with those types of people and in that realm. And I'm still going to be in sales. I'm still going to be doing yoga teaching and still doing tarot card reading, because it's all like we're not separate of like, I'm not this like business person and then this like tarot reader. I'm like all of it, and
I
just
see.
accepting that and just figuring out how I can like be more available to more people, and also
Yeah.
like stay true to myself.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
where.
Because there's so many facets of us, right? We're not all just one.
Exactly.
But it depends on how all those pieces of that puzzle of oneness of who we are come together in our life. I think that's where the curiosity and the insight comes for me, of how can we put all these pieces together. And there is a lineage and there is a line that brings it all together, but what is that? So
Yes. That center, that core. And of course I'll still be teaching with Gaia. I love like being able to offer courses that way. It's like such a unique experience to be like able to teach to so many people that I'll never meet in my whole life. So hopefully I'll do
yes,
that for as long as I can, and
yeah.
just have fun in life as much as I can. Stay as healthy
Well,
as I can.
isn't that the biggest caveat right there? Have fun, because
Yes.
we're living life so seriously these
Right.
days of what's going to happen and what's not going to happen. But staying persistent to have fun, I think, that's a good motto. I like that.
Yes. Thank you. I like it
Yeah,
too.
yeah, yeah. Tiffany, I want to thank you so much for sharing and for taking the time out to sharing your wisdom and your inner parts of who you are.
Oh, thank you for pulling those out.
Thank you for sharing. I really
Yes.
appreciate it. So,
Thank you.
I'm Naranjan, and you've been listening to Master of Your Crafts podcast. Please subscribe, rate, and review, and join me next week for another episode. Thank you for listening.